I don't want kids, and I'm not apologizing for it. Now, before you click off or leave an angry comment, let me be clear. I completely respect people who want to have children. I'm deeply grateful for the sacrifices my parents even made for me. Raising kids is basically working another full-time job, longer hours, higher stress, but also it could be potentially more fulfilling and actually even provide more purpose. And I actually completely understand that it's important for society. Even now, we're in a population collapse in the United States, Japan, South Korea, and many other developed countries are going through this. And it's going to be a massive problem for economic growth going forward. So yes, having kids does matter for humanity, for society, for continuing the species even. But for me personally, it just doesn't make any sense. And today I want to explain why. I'm not here to convince you, not to judge anyone else's choices, but to be honest about how I see the world and how that shaped my life decisions. Because choosing whether to have kids is one of the biggest decisions you'll ever make. And for me, when I look at the world through my lens, which includes long-term risk, analysis, global uncertainty, mobility, financial logic, and personal fulfillment, it's pretty clear why kids don't fit into my personal plan, especially not in this era. I naturally think in terms of global stability, long-term trends, and macro-level patterns. You could say I'm pretty analytical. I pay attention to how economies shift, how geopolitical tensions rise, how cost of living changes around the world, and how systems behave over time. And because of this, I'm probably more aware than most people of how unpredictable and unstable the future feels right now. Here are some examples. Economic volatility. Inflation is still pretty high. In most developed countries, housing costs have doubled in the past decade. We have massive political instability. We are changing tides completely every 4 years. We are going way too far right, we are going way too far left, and those polar opposites create massive change every single 4 years here in the United States. There's even rapid technology change. AI is about to disrupt every single industry. The job market in 10 years will look completely different from today. We have no idea what skills will be valuable or what jobs will still exist. And not even just AI, we also have the rise of robotics now. Am I even going to be able to be stably employed by then? Will I have a passive or a mainstream of income even? Will it still be relevant? Who knows? And to me, the idea of raising a child in this environment feels kind of irresponsible, or at the very least, unnecessarily risky. I don't approach life on autopilot. I evaluate big decisions very carefully. And in this era, the conditions just don't feel stable enough for me to commit to raising a human being for over 18 plus years, because first-time homebuyers now are 40 plus years old. So you're saying I would have to actually commit to raising somebody, an entire adult human being, past the 18-year commitment, and even through their adulthood. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe most people just have to have kids and figure it out as they go, but that's just not how I operate, and I'm okay with that. A huge part of my identity revolves around mobility. I think a lot about living abroad, traveling yearly, having the freedom to relocate and explore the world whenever an opportunity arises. That freedom is important to me. It's one of my core values. It's what makes my life exciting and meaningful to me. And a kid would significantly limit that mobility. Kids need stability, they need consistent schooling, long-term housing, and a routine. You can't just uproot them whenever a new opportunity appears. And I get that. Kids deserve stability. If you're going to have a child, you should be able to provide that. But my lifestyle is built around flexibility and the ability to pivot globally whenever an opportunity arises or appears. Let's say I want to spend 6 months in Mexico. Then I want to move to Thailand for a year. Then let's say I want to go to the US for next year. Then maybe live in Vietnam for a little portion of my life. I want to be able to say yes to an opportunity to live in another country without having or to worry about schools, visas for my dependents, or uprooting a child's life. That's how I want to live, and kids directly conflict with that. Some people may say, well, you could travel with kids, or you have to make the sacrifice. But do I really? I respect those people, but that would be a completely different experience. You're not freely exploring, you're managing a child and their needs while traveling. And that's just not the kind of life I want. A lot of my time and energy goes into building things. I'm building this YouTube channel. I'm working on a SaaS, a software as a service. I'm constantly learning new skills, exploring new ideas, and working on long-term projects. I thrive when I have the space to focus deeply on creation, learning, and building. And kids require constant attention and emotional energy. Exact things that pull from my mental bandwidth I use to create. This isn't about avoiding responsibility. It's about knowing what kind of work brings me fulfillment. And that work requires my time, my focus, and independence. In this fast-moving era of technology and opportunity, I don't want to sacrifice the momentum I've built to raise a family. Because if I have a kid, my priorities will change completely. Suddenly, it's not about what project do I want to work on now. It's about how do I pay for childcare? How do I balance my career with being a present parent? And those are very valid priorities, just not my priorities. I get fulfillment from building, from creating, from learning, from executing on my big, ambitious projects. And I don't want to give that up. And for my early retirement goals, it just doesn't make any sense. We can even break down some numbers here because I think in long-term financial efficiency, the ROI, opportunity costs, and financial strategies, right? The average cost of raising a kid to the age of 18 in the United States is almost the cost of buying a house. Once you include college and everything, like you're talking about $400,000 to $600,000 minimum. That's not even calculating for the change of inflation over those years either, which would be like 2.5 to 3% annually added on top of that, compounding. If I just use that money to build a business, invest, or travel the world, or fund my own passion projects, that would be enough to fund my early retirement even in some locations. Now, I'm not saying kids should be viewed purely as a financial investment because they're not. They're human beings. But for me, major life decisions have to align with my long-term strategies and values. And when I weigh the financial cost of kids against my long-term goals, the math just doesn't support it. There's even some people that will say you can't put a price on the joy of having kids. And that's fair because I can put a price on my freedom, my time, and my ability to pursue the life I actually want. And for me, the trade-offs are still not worth it. One thing about me is that I don't jump into big commitments blindly. I prefer understanding the terrain, evaluating the risk, and making sure conditions are right. And right now, the world feels very unpredictable. The economy is shifting rapidly, laws and policies are changing overnight, and social conditions feel unstable too. And if I'm going to commit to something as serious as raising a human being, I want that child to grow up in an environment of stability and predictability. And that's just not the era we're living in. I don't feel comfortable bringing a child into that world. Maybe that's me being pessimistic. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I'd rather be cautious about decisions this big than make it and regret it later. A lot of people have kids because they're searching for some purpose. They want to feel like their lives matter. They want something meaningful to dedicate themselves to. And I get that. For a lot of people, kids provide that. But I don't feel that void. I already have meaningful purpose. I get from building things, learning, creating ideas, expanding my skill set. My sense of purpose comes from growth, freedom, exploration, and creation, not from raising a family. I don't feel like I'm missing something, and I don't need children to feel satisfied. In this era, especially where the world is full of opportunities to learn, to build, and to create even, I'm already building and living a life that feels purposeful to me. So I don't need a kid to add on to that. And we can even look at this on how this is going to impact my financial independence. Because not having a kid changes everything about my fire plan. My annual spending will actually stay the same and predictable. My even target number is way lower without a child. There's going to be a lot of variable costs that would pop up in the future. Childcare, bigger housing, because right now I'm renting a 1-bedroom from my friend's apartment. Education costs, health insurance for dependents. But for me personally, I don't need to calculate any of those variables. My annual expenses are going to be way lower than someone with a kid, which means I need way less money for retirement. Instead of needing $2 million, let's say, to retire, I probably only need $700 to $1 million. And that's a massive difference. The second thing is that I could take bigger risks with my career, sacrificing stability for a little bit. If I had kids, I'd need stability. I need a reliable income. I couldn't afford to quit my job to build a business or take a year off to travel. But without kids, I can take those risks. I can quit my job if I hit my fire number. I can spend 6 months in a low-cost country testing out early retirement. I can even pivot my career without worrying about providing for dependents or anybody. And I can optimize aggressively. Right now, I save about 40 to 50% of my income. I live with roommates. I try to cook at home. I minimize expenses whenever I can. And I can do that because I'm only responsible for myself, and I do have a girlfriend who I sometimes pay for. But if I had a kid, I couldn't live this way. I need a bigger place. I'd have to pay for daycare, school supplies, extra activities, and healthcare. My savings rate would drop significantly, probably to 10 to 20%. And my timeline to fire would extend by more than a decade easily. So yeah, not having kids fundamentally changes my fire plan. It makes it way faster, cheaper, and more flexible. And that's something I personally value. And look, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about judging people who want to have kids. If you want kids, that's great. Genuinely. I respect that choice, and I'm grateful to people who choose to raise the next generation. But for me, it doesn't make sense. I don't want kids in this era because it doesn't align with who I am, what I value, or how I see the world. My thinking is shaped by global awareness, financial strategies, personal freedom, and a creator mindset. And none of those things are compatible with modern day parenthood. This isn't about fear or negativity. It's about being clear on your purpose and what you want in life. I know the kind of life I want, And I know that bringing a child into this unpredictable era would pull me away from my path. And that path I'm intentionally creating. My choices are very deliberate, they're logical, and aligned with who I am as a person. And I think more people should be honest about this because there's so much pressure to have a kid. Society expects it, family expects it, even some friends expect it, but you don't owe anyone a child. You don't have to follow the traditional script just because that's what people did in previous generations. If you want a kid, have them. If you don't, then don't. If you want to delay having a kid, delay having a kid until your 30s. We have the technology and infrastructure for that now. You don't need to have kids in your teenage years or 20s. Just make sure your choice is actually yours, not society's, not your parents', and not even your partner's, yours. You need to find a partner who is aligned with your goals and expectations. If they want to have a kid, cool. They should be bundled with somebody who wants to have a kid. If you don't want to have a kid, find somebody who also does not want to have a kid. It's that simple. So if you're thinking about whether you want kids or not, really sit with it. Think about your values, think about your goals, think about the life you actually want to live, and then make a choice that aligns with that. For me, the choice is clear. No kids, and I'm completely okay with that. If you have thoughts on this, whether you agree or disagree, drop a comment. I'd love to hear your perspective. We can even continue this conversation further in our Discord. We have a community of over 2,200 people constantly talking and building their dream lives in there. And if that sounds like somebody you want to be associated with, join it. We welcome any new members. And also, if you would like to support this channel further, there is a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description down below. Support is completely optional, by the way. I don't require for anything, but there are going to be some pretty cool benefits I'll be adding onto it later. And if you're someone who's chosen not to have kids and you're building towards FIRE or early retirement, let me know. I think we can have a more honest conversation about this. And we need to have more conversations about this. It's a really important topic for many people's path. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Click the like button if you did, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.